watching Minute to Skim It on the Experience. So, hello. All right, I've got lots of books to review for you guys today. And Hannah just basically showed up just the number ones and showed them to me, and I was like, "Oh, we have
just for the indies." Just for the indies,
yeah. I was like, we have got a lot to do.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, a multiverse variant of Kyle Northrup. And I need to get this episode done before I get pruned by the TVA. All right, we have one big topic we are going to tackle today. We are going to talk about the new series, Marvel's What If? But before we get into that, I want to just hit a couple bits of news that have popped up over the last couple days since I have not had a show since Thursday? I thought I'd catch you up on a few things in case you hadn't heard. Now, one of the big things coming out is that Warner Brothers has found their Blue Beetle. Now, this is Cobra Kai actor, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name, Xolo Manduina. And it was reported that he was in talks to play Jaime Reyes, or Jamie Reyes, in the upcoming DC Universe film. Well, at the Suicide Squad premiere the other night, Manduina was posing with Angel Manuel Soto, who will be directing the film. Now, Aaron Couch over at The Hollywood Reporter, who posted the image, says that the director confirmed the casting. This will be an HBO Max movie similar to Batgirl, which has got Leslie Grace in the lead. So this is kind of an interesting thing. This is going to be a movie directly to HBO Max, not a shared release or anything like that. Paul says, can we prune the original instead? And JD responds, no, because he's the only thing holding this network together. That's a lot of truth to that. So... All right, let's go ahead and pop on to the next story. Kit Harington was on Sirius XM and talking about his reason he decided to join the Eternals movie. And he says, well, the character I won't go into why he interests me because it's more than my life is worth to tell you. I'm joking about Marvel and their whole thing. But he says, but what did interest me about the piece was that Chloe Zhao directing. I met her and spoke with her and was so impressed by her. The cast was sort of phenomenal and wide-ranging and diverse. It just looked like they were doing something really different with this movie. I can't tell you much about it, but we filmed it pre-pandemic and it's coming out finally. It was sort of frustrating that it got pushed back so much, but now I'm going to go on and do some press for that soon, and it's really exciting. So, Kit Harington... Obviously, there's something about the character. We know the Black Knight is more than just a love interest for Cersei. He's a big part of the MCU. There's a current series going on written by Simon Spurrier and art by Sergio Davila that has been really good. They just had the 5th issue come out. I still need to get over to the store and pick it up. But they've got plans for the Black Knight in the MCU. Don't be surprised if he doesn't end up as an Avenger. All right. Another bit of news coming out of Fox, not news, Fox TV channel, or FX, excuse me. We now know that Why the Last Man has gotten a premiere date. The Vertigo series from Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerrera will be making its debut on FX on September 13th. The post-apocalyptic series follows York Brown, who will be played by Ben Schnetzer, and his pet capuchin monkey, Ampersand, the only two males who survived an apparent global androcide. Now, I'd never heard the word androcide before, but I kind of like it. Now, the movie also, or the series also stars Diane Lane from, Streets of Fire, all the way up through the recent Superman movies as Martha Kent. Olivia Thirlby, who played Judge Sanderson, or the female judge in the Judge Dredd movie, or Dredd. There's also Ashley Romans, Juliana Canfield, and Amber Tamblyn. And there's also talk that Timothy Hutton is in the series, which is interesting, Anime and Comics says they're here for the heckling. All right, go for it. Also, an interesting bit of news that I just saw before coming on air is that the Miss Marvel series, which Victoria Alonso came out and said we were going to get Hawkeye and Miss Marvel before the end of the year. And now there's a report from TV Line that Miss Marvel will be bumped into 2022, and Hawkeye is is going to be airing from November 24th to the end of the year. It's all getting kind of weird how they're going to try to squeeze all this together. So, November 24th for Hawkeye. Miss Marvel's likely going into 2022, which is going to be a busy year anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what caused it to be delayed. We do know that there's some other effects of COVID still playing out. I'm going to get to that in the big topic as well. But, Anime and Comics is Kyle. Kyle, you're supposed to be resting. What are you doing? Put down the phone. Go to sleep. Stop it. SB632 says, I also saw they finally released when Hawkeye will premiere. Yeah, exactly. And being that it's a 6-episode series, that should carry it out to the end of the year, which doesn't give a lot of room for Miss Marvel. But also you got to figure out, well, where's Book of Boba Fett going? Is that getting bumped as well? It'd be really nice if Disney Plus actually came out and gave us some specifics. Does eating dinner mean Jell-O, Kyle? Because you're in the hospital, right? You're eating Jell-O. All right. Let's get to our main topic. Today's show is going to be about Marvel's What If series. It starts on the 11th, which is 1 week from today-ish. Yeah, well, it starts on the 11th, but I'm in LA, so I think of it as the 10th. So 1 week from tonight, midnight, it'll drop. Jell-O and Salisbury steak, that's hospital food to me. Yep. Ham and turkey sandwich. What hospital are you at that's doing ham and turkey? Jeez. You Ohioans and your Medicare system. Wow. All right. So next week, the Marvel's first animated series is going to kick off. What If? Now, most comic fans are familiar with What If. Well, at least the comic series. But for those of you who aren't, I'm going to give you kind of a brief history on it, and then we'll talk about what we know about the animated series and who's going to be showing up, what we can expect, and how it might actually affect the MCU going forward. Now, the first issue of What If debuted all the way back in February of 1977, before Kyle was born, and it ran for 47 issues. The first story was What If Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four, and it's based on the fact that Spider-Man went to the Fantastic Four in Amazing Spider-Man #1 to try to get some help. Now, the issue was done by Roy Thomas and Jim Craig, and not only answered that question, but it introduced readers to the idea that there existed many realities, and in each there are divergences from what happened in our own. And they gave us the narrator, Uatu, and he's part of a race of watchers that observe and never interfere. But he actually occasionally does, like in Fantastic Four #13, where he first appeared, done by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, in this case, Uatu is used as kind of the crypt keeper or Elvira, the way to tie the stories together. Kyle says he has every What If except the most recent run. You have some very good stories and some very bad ones. Does that mean you have the what if the Fantastic Four was the Marvel bullpen? Now, they did a variety of stories in the initial run, some of which might seem familiar because they've ended up doing them as actual plot lines. We've got what if Jane Foster picked up Thor's hammer? What if the Hulk had the brains of Bruce Banner? What if Bucky hadn't died? What if Captain America was revised today? Yeah, I mean, we're seeing all those things. But they also did a lot of odd ones, like what if the Marvel bullpen were the Fantastic Four? Which would be a really tough sell in the MCU. Now, the series itself, how did this happen? Well, it really comes down to Roy Thomas. And Thomas had been the editor-in-chief at Marvel, and in 1975 he stepped down. But he was still writing and editing dozens of books a month. And he wanted to come up with titles he could do that were kind of outside the main Marvel continuity. He didn't want to have to, check in with every these writers and everything else to make sure he's not stepping on anybody's toes. Oh, you can't use Captain America this week because he's off with the Avengers in space, and you can't use this guy or that guy. He didn't want to have to deal with that. He's been dealing with it most of the time he worked at Marvel. He wanted to be a little more free. So he came up with a couple ideas. The first one was actually The Invaders. And The Invaders is very interesting because it was set in World War II, but consisted of heroes from that era. Captain America, Namor, and the android Torch, all of whom were characters from that era from Marvel, but weren't actually or prior to them becoming Marvel from Timely Comics. Namor and the first Human Torch were the first two characters for Timely Comics in a book called Marvel Comics #1. Captain America was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. So they were their World War II characters. So he decided to use them. And because it took place in World War II, he didn't really have to check in on what was going on with the rest of the characters. All he had to do was just write the story he wanted to write and never kill off the characters that are still around today. Now, JD says, I feel like 60% of current Marvel title stories should be what if. And yeah, that's probably true. Now, the other thing he came up with was what if. He could use major characters, change them each month in any way he wanted to. He could change artists, and the main continuity wouldn't be affected at all. Basically, Thomas pitched the title, What If, knowing that it would already appeal to Stan Lee, because Stan would use that a lot in his scripts. So basically, he was taking his knowledge of having worked with Stan for all those years and pitched this idea knowing it was kind of tailor-made for Stan. That Stan would rubber stamp it, and that's pretty much what happened. Now, the series, like I said, was 47 issues, and then it was shelved in 1984 for about 5 years. Then it was relaunched in 89 and lasted 115 issues. So from July 1989 to November 1998, What If was a monthly ongoing series. Now, the new series had some changes, though. They could revisit some of the stories that had been done in the previous volume. They could also span multiple issues if they wanted to. Previously, everything was one self-contained issue. And then next issue, it went someplace completely different. This one could spread out over multiple issues if that's the story they wanted to do. And on a few occasions, the readers were even given multiple endings. There's a couple, like Choose Your Own Adventures, where you could pick which ending you liked the best. And while the second volume included a lot of humor, just like the first one did, they also got a little darker, in some things. Like there was What If the Fantastic Four's second child had lived? Or what if the Punisher became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? They did a lot of those. The what if somebody became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think they also did Wolverine and Daredevil. So they really liked that combination of let's take a hero and make him part of S.H.I.E.L.D. And there was even What If Magneto Ruled All the Mutants. Also, the volume had a breakout star, in a sense. They did in episode number 105, they introduced Spider-Girl, who was Mayday Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. But she was so popular when she was introduced, they gave her a spin-off series and then created the whole MC2 line just because of this character's popularity in the What If series. So, I mean, that's pretty incredible right there. Now, since Marvel has periodically done more since then, Marvel has periodically done more What Ifs. Every couple of years, there was a fourth volume in 2006 that changed things up a bit and were presented more like DC's Elseworlds, you know. And then you had stuff like, what if Captain America fought a character called the White Skull during the Civil War? Or Wolverine becoming the Punisher in the 1920s Chicago mob scene? And Thor becoming the Herald of Galactus. So they went with a little more Elseworld feel for the fourth volume. In 2013, there was a 10th volume that turned out just to be a 4-part miniseries based on the Avengers versus the X-Men. And it was written by Jimmy Palmiotti and drawn by Jorge Molina. The most recent one, which was volume 13, were a collection of 6 one-shots that focused more on specific characters than any specific question. You know, they did X-Men, Spider-Man, Punisher, Magic. So it wasn't really a what if something specific happened. It just changed the character altogether. Now, the bottom line is, What If was both a place for Marvel to have some fun and to tell some great stories. They could focus on the obvious moments in their history, like Karen Page's death, Jean Grey's death, Elektra's death. They spent a lot of time on death. The Fantastic Four getting their powers, or what would happen if they didn't get their powers, but still had to fight the Mole Man. They even went with what if Wolverine defeated the Hulk in Wolverine's first appearance. Or they could go totally Elseworld and have stuff like Wolverine becoming Lord of the Vampires, or Thanos joining the Avengers, which I believe happened recently. Or the Gamma Bomb going off and actually spreading out and creating thousands of Hulks. So it really was a wide open series for them. They could do anything they wanted by the very setup of the series. This is an alternate universe, so anything could happen thing. But like we've seen, it also turned into a testing ground for ideas like bringing back Bucky, bringing back Phoenix or Elektra, introducing Spider-Girl. A lot of the concepts that if the fans really liked them in What If, it kind of greased the wheels to let these things happen in the main continuity. So that's kind of the background on What If. But now, what if Kevin Feige decided to take that same idea and introduce it into the MCU? We could explore ideas like, what if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum? What if Killmonger was raised in Wakanda? Or what if Yondu took T'Challa instead of Peter Quill? Feige would want to keep Uatu, the Watcher, as part of the series and cast a big-name actor with a great voice like Jeffrey Wright from Westworld, and he would animate it so he could do these big-budget concepts and bring back actors from the live-action films without breaking the bank. But would he do it just for the entertainment value? To get more subscribers for Disney Plus? Or does he have a bigger plan in the works? What if this new series isn't just a side project? And that some of the concepts and even some of the characters might find their way into the main MCU? I mean, Loki did just break the sacred timeline after all. Now, let's pause for just a second. I want to remind you guys. JD says, I hope not, but you're probably right. Yeah. I think there's going to be some connection. But I want to remind you guys, as we're going along here, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at _EXP1, and stick around after this show for Black Comic Universe with Amani Latif, followed by Minute to Skim It, and then at 5 o'clock Pacific time, in stores tonight with me and no Kyle. So I'm going to be the one going through the books tonight. Now, I'm going to continue on with this. We'll probably do a commercial in just a little bit, but let's go. I'm going to be back to reading comics. I'll be back later. Okay. Bye, Kyle. Get well. Now, Marvel released a production brief for Marvel, for What If. And this is how they describe the series. It says, Marvel Studios' What If flips the script on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, reimagining famous events from the films in unexpected ways, creating a multiverse of infinite possibilities. What If features fan-favorite characters including Peggy Carter, T'Challa, Doctor Strange, Killmonger, Thor, and more. Debuting exclusively on Disney Plus on August 11th, What If features the voice of Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher. Marvel Studios' first ever animated series also features the voices of a host of stars who reprise their iconic roles in the MCU, though their characters' journey promise to be wildly unique. It's an anthology, says executive producer Brad Winderbaum. The Watcher introduces us each week to these alternative storylines, each kind of cautionary tale in the spirit of the Twilight Zone. We bounced around genres and tone. Some episodes will be dramatic, some will be tragic or comedic. Now, that part we hadn't really talked about. The O. Henry type endings, the Twilight Zone feel that they're going to go for here, the be careful what you wish for thing. They haven't really talked about that prior to this conversation. And you didn't really get that in the comics. They weren't specifically created. The comics were more, hey, what would it be like if? But this sounds like it's going to have more of a narrative and a moral take to it, you know? Now, JD says, creating a multiverse for milking the cash cow and adding to superhero fatigue. I'm negative, but it's because multiverses have really killed my enthusiasm for Marvel Comics. I agree. I think they could do this right by playing with the multiverse just a little bit, wrapping it up by the end of Phase 4, whether they push it together at the end of Doctor Strange, or if the Fantastic Four movie is the one that finally does it. But I'm hoping that the multiverse and Kang is just Phase 4, and by the time we get out of it, they use it in kind of a Crisis on Infinite Earth way to set the MCU how they want it to be, because in the beginning there wasn't always a clear-cut path, so some mistakes were made. So if they want to do stuff like bring back a character that died, or bring in a group of characters that should have been around the whole time but weren't, that's something they could do with the multiverse, especially if it gets all condensed back down. I am hoping that's what they do with it, and then they put it aside and move on to some more grounded stuff or more cosmic stuff, like the Celestials, or we get into the Dark Avengers and we go a different direction for Phase 5. I think we can deal with this for one phase, but let's not do 3 phases like they did with Thanos, especially since these phases are so much bigger than like Phase 1. Phase 1 was, 5 movies total? 2 Iron Mans, Captain America, Thor, and then the Avengers. Oh, and the Hulk. 6 movies. So it's 6 movies. Now you're 6 movies in before you even get halfway through. I mean, we're getting like 4 to 6 movies a year now, let alone in a phase. JD says, I'm aboard for what if Ang Lee's Hulk never happened, though. Let's get a gray Hulk movie before Ruffalo ages out. As long as there's that problem with Universal, where Universal has the distribution rights to the Hulk, I don't see them doing a Hulk movie. I see him popping up in a bunch of stuff. They could take a main character, send him to Vegas, and then have him show up as the Gray Hulk. They could take Thor 5, Viva Las Vegas. Thor ends up in the, Sin City, and the Hulk shows up, but he's the Gray Hulk this time. And, I don't know. They could do something like that. Could be fun. So, now, Bryn Edwards was called on to helm this series. And he says he boarded many of our major, or Winderbaum described him saying, he boarded many of our major action sequences over the years. So, Bryn Andrews, he's directing this, but in the past, he did a lot of their movies, the storyboards and stuff. So he's been around the MCU for a long time, but he's also done animation directing on his own with stuff like Samurai Jack, Symbionic Titan, and even worked on the Clone Wars series. So Disney has worked with him before. Then they went on to say, at the same time my kids were watching Del Toro's Troll Hunter on Netflix, A.C. Bradley, the writer on the show, had come in to pitch for Captain Marvel, which didn't work out due to some other obligations, and producer Jonathan Schwartz recommended her for What If. We brought her in, and she understood what we wanted to do immediately. She came back and pitched this emotional, character-focused version of the Captain Carter story. Now, something I saw today, which was interesting, is that she pitched some stories that got rejected, but not because they were bad or she didn't have a feel for the characters. It's the opposite. She had too good a feel for the characters. She pitched stuff, and this was before Endgame came out. She pitched a story about an old Captain America and a Banner-controlled Hulk. She pitched a story about Jane Foster becoming Thor. And she pitched a story about the Guardians of the Galaxy that everybody loves, but then pointed out the fact that it was pretty much half of James Gunn's plan for Guardians 3 already. So, Sean Butler says, I'd like to see them include Nova in What If and eventually into the MCU. Nova is a character that has been talked about a lot. There's been plans to bring him in, but they haven't worked out. We got sort of the setup for it in Guardians, and I think we're going to get Nova eventually. It's just kind of taken time to get to him, But I'd like to see him as well. I think he's a great character. I remember when the book came out, getting super excited about it. Now, all right, we're hitting the halfway point, so let JD hit a commercial, and I will come right back with JD's questions about Adam Warlock. So be right back.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey. And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Today's comics market is ripe with new titles by creators who are determined to get their books into your hands. My name is Henri Compen. For the last decade, I've been making and selling my own creator-owned comics and dealing as a collector in live sales. My signature series, Yi Sun Shin, is the book that cannot be defeated in battle and has over 250,000 copies in print. Now I'm taking comics to the next level and laying the groundwork for my fellow creators to get their voices heard so they can connect directly with you. This is your chance to engage live with top comic book talent and get your comics signed without having to wait in long lines or pay any fees. But remember, we only have a limited amount of their books in stock, so always remember to call it as you see it.
That kind of a catchy theme song. I wanted something a little more rocky, some of the good bass line, but it's kind of catchy. So, all right. JD asked, what about Adam Warlock? What happened to him? Now, James Gunn basically set up Adam Warlock twice. He introduced the Cocoon in the Collector's Menagerie, and it was still there when the place got destroyed when the Power Stone went off. And then he introduced it again at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when Aisha, or whatever the character's name, specifically called out the name Adam. So Gunn has called his shot. He's Babe Ruth here, pointing at the left field bleachers saying, Adam Warlock, Adam Warlock. So it's up to Gunn. He's got his third movie. He's starting production on Guardians of the Galaxy 3. If he doesn't bring in Adam Warlock, then I think you got to get on Gunn. Because he kind of claimed the character and set it up twice. And now it really is up to James Gunn to make it happen. JD says, I like to whistle your theme song while I whiz. It's more fun that way. That is way more information than I ever needed, but thank you, JD, for your dedication to the show. All right. Sean Butler said they teased the Nova Corps. They just have to do it. Should it be Richard Rider or Sam, though? I want to see Richard Rider. I'll be honest, because I grew up with Richard Rider. I bought those comics. To me, that was, hey, we're getting a new Spider-Man, basically. We had Peter Parker. Now we have Richard Rider. And just had to, I loved that character. I bought the comics. He fought the Condor guy. I mean, it was awesome. I really liked it. I felt like I was getting in the ground floor with a new, basically a Peter Parker character or a Spider-Man character. So I'd like to see them do Richard Rider. I also am not a fan of them jumping. I mean, there's so much comic history. When they speed through to the newer stuff, I feel like they're leaving a lot of great stories on the table. I think that's one of the big flaws of the first three Spider-Man movies. Spider-Man 1 and 2, the Sam Raimi movies, were fantastic. When they got to 3, Raimi was still doing his thing. He was taking a classic character, putting an emotional story, tying him to Peter directly, and then the studio forced him to put Venom in. And I think that's where the whole movie went wrong. By trying to cram too many villains in, forcing Raimi to tell a story he didn't want to tell. And, and I just don't like when they jump so far ahead. It's like, let's tell some of the classic stories, then we can build our way up. You know, there are so many great stories to tell. Spider-Man 3, all the villains, give me more villains. You just want the Sinister Six, don't you? That's how I feel about Ant-Man not using Hank Pym and going to Scott Lang. Yeah, I'm kind of the same on that, but I really liked the story they did. And I think in this case, and maybe that's what they'll do with Nova, I think going with Scott gave us a different type of hero in the MCU than Hank isn't that different than Tony Stark. They're both brilliant scientist inventors that built a way, basically, invented a way to become superheroes. If you made him younger, then you get Hank. You've also got some of the issues that come up with Hank in the comics with his mental health, the abusiveness, stuff like that. So I think going with Scott made some sense, and I think it introduced, like I said, an ex-con hero, the first in the MCU. It gave us a lot of different aspects, and I think it worked. So in that case, I probably would have gone with Hank, but I see why they did it. I don't see the reason to do Sam over Richard, because I think you're kind of the same story, just different generations. Yeah, JD agrees that SM3 is contrived. The whole amnesia story lacking onto Uncle Ben's death, the symbiote story. Yeah, the connecting it to Ben's death, I thought was a little over the top. They didn't need to do that. If there was ever a movie I would love to see the director's extended cut of, it's Spider-Man 3. Agreed. I'd like to have seen what Raimi could have done just on his own without the studio interference, but we're not going to get that. But we were talking about what if. So, but to finish up with Sean's point about Nova, I think they've already set it up. Because I'm pretty sure that the homeworld was destroyed or at least attacked by Thanos to get the Power Stone. So there's a good chance that that whole thing is in waste, and that they've done kind of a Green Lantern Corps thing and have sent out the powers trying to find new recruits. So they've got it set up. They could do the Richard Rider Nova story. Will they do it? I mean, it seems like it would be a great Disney Plus series. I'd be all up for that. So let's see what they do with it. All right, let's get back to what if. Now, we were talking about the different, bringing on Andrews and Bradley. Now, Andrew jumped at this because this was the opportunity that allowed him to summon everything he knew about the animation, the MCU, and storytelling. He said, we'd get together and basically nerd out. We had an embarrassment of riches in terms of characters, storyline, twist. The sky's the limit, really. Which is nice to know that they're just kind of opening the door and letting these guys go. Now, Bradley, who knew she wanted to write for Marvel Studios the day she saw Iron Man, according to her, says narrowing down which stories to do was the hardest part. We looked at the big moments in the MCU and thought about ways to twist them. That's where we started. We came up with 30 log lines and pitched them to Kevin Feige. Now, he picked 25. That was big because we knew we were on the right track. But when we had to narrow it down more, and eventually found our season. Now, according to Andrews, the look of the series is illustrative. He says we reached back into time and looked at classic American illustrators. There's a certain kind of heroic, hyper-realized, super idealized look that feels iconic. That's the style to it, but it's not pushed or cartoony. So if you're wondering why the series is going to look the way it's going to do, They were going for that specific classic hyper-realized, super idealized look. Now, part of the announcement listed the cast, and this is where it starts getting real interesting. Okay, this is a huge list, but I'm going to read it because you're going to pick up some names that we haven't seen in the trailers for characters who we haven't seen in a while. So it says, what if features the voices of more than 50 MCU cast members who reprise their roles, including Andy Serkis, Angela Bassett, Benedict Cumberbatch, Benedict Wong, Benicio del Toro, Bradley Whitford, Carrie Coon, Chadwick Boseman, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Sullivan, Clancy Brown, Clark Gregg, Kobe Smulders, Dana Gurari, David Dastmalchian, Diamond Hansu, Dominic Cooper, Don Cheadle, Emily Van Camp, Evangeline Lilly, Frank Grillo, Georgia St. Pierre, Clancy Brown, Georgia St. Pierre, Haley Atwell, Jamie Alexander, Jeff Goldblum, Jeremy Renner, John Caney, Jon Favreau, Josh Brolin, Karen Gillian, Kat Dennings, Kurt Russell, Leslie Bibb, Mark Ruffalo, Michael B. Jordan, Michael Douglas, Michael Rooker, Natalie Portman, Neil McDonough, Ophelia Lovabond, Paul Bettany, Paul Rudd, Rachel House, Rachel McAdams, Samuel L. Jackson, Sean Gunn, Sebastian Stan, Seth Green, Stanley Tucci, Taika Waititi, Tilda Swinton, Toby Jones, Tom Hiddleston, and Tom Von Lawler. Now, a lot of those names are going to, some of them may have skipped your mind or you can't place them, like Bradley Whitford. Bradley Whitford, we all know from West Wing and a bunch of other shows and the horror movies he's been doing, stuff like that. Well, Bradley Whitford appeared in the MCU as John Flynn in the Agent Carter one-shot. Okay, that's how down to minutia they're getting. They're pulling from one of the one-shots. Okay, Clancy Brown appeared as the voice of Surtur. Neil McDonough played Dum Dum Dugan in Captain America: The First Avenger, but also appeared in the Agent Carter one-shot when he was sitting there with Dominic Cooper, who's also popping up. Ophelia Lovebond was Corina, the pink-skinned girl who worked for the Collector, and we see Benicio del Toro in here as well. Seth Green was, of course, the voice of Howard the Duck, and we know they're bringing back Howard the Duck. Plus, it looks like we're going to get Crossbones, Frank Grillo, Batroc the Lipa, which, of course, George St. Pierre, Proxima Midnight, Carrie Coon, Ulysses Claw with Andy Serkis, Taserface. The guy, Chris Sullivan, who played Taserface, is on this list. And it looks like we're getting more of Maria Hill and Phil Coulson. Now, Coulson, of course, is maybe the most interesting one because we're still not sure what is going on with Phil Coulson. He died in the proper MCU, was resurrected onto the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series back when they were telling us it was all connected. Then Marvel Studio and Marvel Television had problems, and suddenly nothing was connected. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. still acted like it was connected in canon. So the fact we're getting Coulson back, and it's Clark Gregg, is there a chance that they're going to clear this up? Maybe we'll figure out what the hell's going on. I mean, the Netflix series, the ABC series, the Freeform / Hulu series, they all tied in to the MCU proper. So we have that expectation that they're part of it. But now they're going, nope, not part of it. So they're not being straightforward about it, and they're not giving us answers. And I think that it's about time they do, whether it's, okay, we're going to introduce, we get all the rumors about Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio Christian Ritter and John Bernthal all popping up in the MCU, but they don't come out and say it for sure. We're going to have to wait till December for Spider-Man No Way Home or the She-Hulk series. I mean, does Kingpin show up in the Hawkeye series as rumored? I mean, there's so many questions, and it would be nice if Marvel just kind of gave us answers at some point. At least if something's not canon and they're not going to use it, maybe they should just tell us. All right, by the way, Taserface. If you don't know the history of Taserface, Taserface was a character created by Jim Valentino when he was working on Guardians of the Galaxy. But it was created by him and his son, who was like 7 or 9 years old at the time. And the son came up with the name Taserface. And Jim went with it because that's the kind of guy Jim is. I thought it was awesome. Well, sure enough, James Gunn comes along, sees Taserface, and decides that guy's got to be in my movie. So that's why we have Taserface, and he's going to come back into What If. So now, there's another thing we've learned just recently, and that is that we were told originally the series was going to be 10 episodes. That's not the case. Winderbaum, the executive producer, was talking to Collider, and he said we had to push an episode into season 2. It was just, honestly, like everything else, that was a COVID impact. There was an episode that just wouldn't hit the completion date. But luckily, we do get to see it in the second season of the show. Season 2 will also have 9 episodes. Now, that's fascinating because originally, Kevin Feige said every Marvel movie would have its own What If series. Well, that's 18, and we're, 24, 25 movies in? So is it just 2 seasons? Is there a third season? How's this going to work? So it'd be nice if we get some more answers about that. Now, he also said we targeted a half hour for each episode. Some of them come in a little longer. Some of them come in a little shorter. We wanted to tell as many stories as we could, and we had a certain budget we had to work with. So it felt that 10 episodes, now 9, was the right quantity. So does that mean that they were going to do 10 episodes in season 1 and only 8 in season 2? Because now it's 9 and 9? JD says, might as well do more seasons. The 3D assets are already made. Very true. It would be smart for them, and they are starting. There was the announcement that they are starting their own animation studio to do projects like this. Now, I don't know how much of what they're currently doing will just be rolled into the new animation studio. Will it be started from scratch? Will What If move under that umbrella? I think it should. And I mean, it seems like they're already starting, so why reinvent the wheel? But again, we'll have to see how it goes and what stories they want to tell in the animated series, because how will people react to it? Right now, the word is that, Kevin Feige said you don't have to watch What If. I think What If is going to be kind of a primer in the sense that it'll get fans used to the idea of the multiverse and some of the changes. And then when they squish it all back together, they could do the big changes to set the universe how they want. So they'll want people to watch this series. Doesn't mean they have to, though. And Feige's always been good about making it where you don't have to watch everything in the MCU to get what's going on. Now, let's take a quick look at Uatu. I've got a few minutes left here. But Uatu, of course, is going to be played by Jeffrey Wright. And A.C. Bradley described the character in kind of the most unique way I've ever heard. She said, the Watcher is kind of a cosmic character who is very similar to the New York City pizza rat. Or at least, not so much he is, but we are. Someone filmed the rat dragging a slice of pizza across the subway platform. It was on Twitter, BuzzFeed, it went viral. We all watched it. We're all the watcher. Cheering this rat on, find it hysterically funny, but we're not going to go close to the rat and bring him home. It's a rat, so the watcher views humanity as simply lowly and disgusting. But at the same time, he's fascinated by what he's seen, and the more he sees, the more his understanding of humanity grows. Now, Bryn Edwards talks about bringing in Jeffrey Wright. He says, I just love that guy. His voice is just so rich, so unique. His career has been great, but when he showed up as Felix Leiter in the new James Bond series, I was blown away. He's so talented in that way. He uses his voice with various variations of inflection. A single word can give a sentence a whole new meaning. Jeffrey really helped us craft a three-dimensional character that's interesting and dynamic. Now, Wright said about joining, he says, it's obviously pretty cool to be stepping into the MCU now. Exciting place. But of course, the watcher has always been there, really, watching. So as long as Jeffrey Wright has actually been watching the series, all the movies, he's kind of been the watcher the whole time, huh? Yeah, you could look at it that way. Now, that's pretty much the primer for What If. A lot of the stuff coming from the release they put out. We know that the first episode is going to be the Captain Carter episode. And there's a good chance that Haley Atwell's character will pop up in other episodes. It's supposed to be an anthology, but from what I understand, some of the characters continue on, and eventually we get the big kind of crossover. We get the Galactic Guardians, or whatever they call themselves, the Guardians of the Multiverse. So that's connected. But there's also rumors that Haley Atwell will be back for season 2. So does that mean that one of her episodes is the one that got bumped? Or is she back for completely new episodes in season 2? Throw that in with the rumor, and again, you got to take all these rumors with a grain of salt, that her character of Captain Carter with the super soldier serum may show up in Doctor Strange as one of the multiverse characters they deal with. It would be nice to see Haley Atwell back in live action. I think it'd be an interesting character to bring over, because you could do that without a lot of explanation. She got the super soldier serum instead of Cap. All right, pretty straightforward. I don't think we'll end up with the little skinny version of Steve Rogers in the robot suit, in the Iron Man suit. Or if we do, he's probably just going to be in the suit without Chris Evans redoing the special effects that he did back then. But you never know. But yeah, I that's pretty much going to cover What If. It's going to kick off. I'm going to cover it as best I can. And we'll see together how much it matters to the MCU overall, how much it's going to stick, or how much is it just entertaining side fare to fill in the gaps. With it being 9 episodes, it'll run through August into September and slightly into October. They could jam Miss Marvel in between, and then wrap it up by the time Hawkeye starts on Thanksgiving weekend, but I don't know if they'll do that. And it seems, and then where does Book of Boba Fett? I mean, there's so many questions, and hopefully we'll start getting some answers soon. All right. We are wrapping up the show here. I want to remind you guys to stick around. Amani Latif is going to be on with Black Comic University right after this, so don't go anywhere. Stick around for that. Right after him at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern, that's going to be Minute to Skim It with Jen and Hannah, I believe. And then come back At 5, I will be here going through the books that you're gonna want to pick up when you hit the comic shops tomorrow. So please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Tell your friends about us. Okay, we're a growing network. We want to build. If you like the show, let your friends know. Bring them over. Bring them over to your house. Watch the show with them. Get them hooked. Follow us on Twitch. Yeah, sure, on Twitch. On Twitter. No, what am I going with here? TikTok and Instagram. That's the one they like me to talk about. TikTok and Instagram at _EXP1. I am working on about 2.5 hours sleep, so I'm a little scattered today. Sean Butler says, I would like to pose a slightly off-topic what if DC ran their movies and shares, where it go? What if DC ran their movies universe as well as Marvel? That would be awesome. They would first have to find somebody like Kevin Smith. So what if DC had their version of Kevin Smith, or not Kevin Smith. Wow. Kevin Feige. That's the biggest problem, is that Warner Brothers doesn't have a Kevin Feige, and they're kind of all over the place. JD says, I'm a sentient spam bot that is powered on likes and shares. Please don't let me die. Yes, we need to keep the little thing going. He needs the likes and the shares to keep. So, and if you like all the episodes that JD produces, we'll give him more episodes and maybe a little less of Kyle, if that's something you'd like. Sean says, I really hoped when they put Jeff Johns in charge, it would work. I think Jeff would have been great at it, but I don't think they allowed him the freedom. They didn't really give him the role. The problem is that Warner Brothers keep turning over and over and over their production, the top of their production. So guys like Jeff Johns can give ideas and they hit walls because a new crew comes in. But all right, guys, I have to wrap it up there. We got to do a couple commercials before Amani takes over. So thank you all. See you tomorrow, where I will have my guest, David Avalon, writer of Elvira Meets Vincent Price, #1, which will be in stores tomorrow. Come back tomorrow to hear me talk with David Avalon. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, JD.